Hello everybody and welcome to Tea with Tutors. My name is Jo Cliff. I'm a module tutor and a module leader for the Learning Institute, and joining me today I have...
Hello, I'm Susie and I've also got a cup of tea and I am the course leader for the early years degree.
Thank you, Susie. So the purpose of today really is to have a bit of a discussion over our cups of tea about something that links to one of the programmes of study that we offer at the Learning Institute. If this whets your appetite and you feel like you would like to find out some more about what we do, then we will provide you with some contact details at the end of this little short video. Today we're going to focus on early years and our early years programme, and we thought it'd be really good over our cups of tea to have a chat about play. So, Susie, tell me, what do you think about play?
Well, Jo, tell me what you mean by play and I might be able to answer your question. What do you actually mean?
See, that's a really tricky one, isn't it? Because in early years, we tend to throw around the term play quite a lot. We throw around the term play as child's work, although if you try to find the origin of that phrase, it's actually quite hard to find. So I think it's something that's just kind of appeared as a natural discourse in the early years field. And I think it's something that we think we know what it is, and we think that we know what play looks like and what it does and what it might even sound like. But actually, how sure are we, and how can we unpick this a little bit further to find out how we can support it for the young people that we work with?
Do you know, Jo, I think you're absolutely right there, because actually, if you look at what we believe as practitioners in play, about play in England, if we look at the statutory requirements for the EYFS, then we have this statutory duty to teach through play. And the EYFS doesn't give us much in the way of clues as to what it means about play either. It's very specific in that it says it might be adult-led or it might be child-led, and it should be a balance of both. But actually, it doesn't give us much of a clue as to what it thinks play is. And this question of what is play has really dominated discussions about play for quite a long time. And I really liked it a little while back where you said, how do we define it? I think it was Janet Moyles who said defining play is a little bit like trying to grasp a bubble. And every time you think you've got something you can hang on to, it kind of disappears and floats away, and you realise that's not quite what you meant by play after all. So yeah, we've had some really big thinkers think about this idea of play, and yet the Earl says very categorically that the person who's playing knows whether they're playing. So there you go.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's something that we are. I think we automatically feel, like you said, we feel like we know what play is. We feel like we know when we're playing, and we feel like we should know how to encourage play. And it's almost like it's something that is just so natural that it's going to, magically become second nature to us. And then, that's before we start bringing in all those. I feel all those kind of really interesting phrases like, purposeful play and meaningful play. And I think that, what do we mean by purposeful play? What is purposeful play to me might be very, very different to what might be purposeful or meaningful play to you. And so that's quite an interesting concept to kind of unpick a little bit further, particularly if you are looking at something like the early years, where, as you said, the early years foundation stage relies quite heavily on play and mentions play throughout, as a way of kind of reaching young children, as a way of inspiring their learning and their development. But actually, if we don't know what some of these words mean, if we don't know what some of these terms mean, and what play might look like to us as adults might be very, very different to what it might look like to the young children we're working with. And also, depending on where in the world that we are, it becomes a bit more of an interesting idea of how we're going to support this magical, undefined thing, if you like, in order to make sure that children are learning and developing when we're taking care of them.
Absolutely, and you're really right that this phrase "purposeful play" is something that we really bandy about. It comes again from the statutory framework. We have the statutory duty, the legal duty, not only to offer learning through play, but for the play to be purposeful, whatever that means, as you say. And if we go back to that idea that you first said about play being natural, we can trace to Rousseau in the 1890s, I think it might have been before that. He was talking about the naturalness of the child and how anything the child did was kind of innocent and natural. Therefore, play was innocent and natural, and the child would naturally learn through this play. And this was a really influential bit of thinking, because until then play hadn't really been thought about as important at all. It was just sort of dismissed. Oh, it's child's play. We still say that today. Oh, something simple is child's play. Whereas Rousseau was saying, no, I think there's something a bit more going on with play. But it's taking us centuries to unpick this kind of mystery of what this play is. It's quite interesting. And you were talking there about this phrase, play is the child's work. Now, I always thought that came from Susan Isaacs. I don't know how many people have heard of Susan Isaacs. She was a psychoanalyst back in the 1950s. And she was one of the first people to say, look, actually, play isn't always easy. Play isn't always about doing what comes naturally. If what comes naturally is easy, it's about more than that. It play is actually very purposeful and has a really big role in a child's life. But actually, some of the most interesting thinkers for me have been the ones who try to look at what behaviours do we display when we play. So, for instance, the most commonly cited behaviours are, well, we choose it. We choose to play. So play is something we choose to do. It's something we're intrinsically motivated to do. And it's something within our control. And it's something quite imaginative often. But it's really interesting because quite often, as soon as somebody says something like, well, play is something we choose to do, you can find an example of something we'd called work that we would also choose to do. I mean, for example, yesterday I had a day off and I chose to spend it tidying out a drawer that has been driving me mad because it's so messy. I chose to do it. I was intrinsically motivated to do it. If you asked me if I were playing, I would say certainly not. But it fulfills those definitions of play. So actually, the more we kind of look at, well, okay, what kind of things do we do when we play and what kind of things do we do when we work, we find out that actually we do very similar things. I mean, my son loves to play in lots of bands. He plays bass, he plays drums. He really spends a lot of time on doing that. He meets challenges, he gets frustrated, he gets angry, he gives it all up, comes back again, and he works through real barriers. If you said, is he playing? Of course he'd say, yeah, of course I'm playing. But actually, it's not something that's been particularly enjoyable. Quite often people say, well, play's enjoyable. Well, actually, was that enjoyable? It was satisfying at the end. Was
Yeah.
it? Certainly wasn't enjoyable for me to look at it. I think work and play sometimes are very similar.
Yeah, I wonder if this idea of, for me, having worked in early years, the same as you have for quite a long time, I wonder sometimes if that is that kind of thought about work and play being sort of synonymous, you could sort of interchangeably use them. I wonder if that comes from, the field of early years is sometimes very often misunderstood, isn't it? If you work in early years, you kind of know that, you have to try to convince people that we don't just turn up and play. It isn't quite as straightforward as that. There's a lot more of a complex issue going on behind, lots more complex learning going, lots of planning required to kind of make this work for the benefit of everybody. And I wonder sometimes then if that kind of idea of play being work has kind of appeared as a way of trying to give a kind of professional identity to those very early first years of taking care of children, going back into the days where, early years education perhaps wasn't as formalised as what it is now.
I think you could be right, and I certainly agree that the whole of the early years profession could do with a safe status lift. I don't think anybody really understands how hard people work in early years, and the influence they have, because what we do is hugely influential. You know, the EPI project showed that, you know, the influence we have children for many, many years to come. And certainly I think raising the status of play would really help that, because I think that idea of it's child's play, it's trivial, it's purposeless, it really prevails today. Have almost two ways of thinking that we switch between. You know, that's simplified, oh, it's child's play, it's easy, it's trivial, it doesn't matter, it's the thing you do after work, alongside, well, actually no, play is learning. You know, if children are playing, they are therefore must be learning, and it must be good learning. And sometimes I think it's hard to marry the two together. I think we have to question both, to be honest. I think neither one is really accurately the whole picture.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. I would definitely agree. So for anyone that's sort of listening to this then, what do you think, you know, what can we do as both parents, as perhaps as people that are just very first stepping out into thinking that early years might be for them? You know, what sort of things can we be looking at, do you think, with regard to play?
I think one of the first things we really need to do is actually goes right the way back to Rousseau, back there in that sort of 18th century. I said 1891 before, I meant 1791, which was the year of the French Revolution. Of course, Rousseau's ideas was very influential on the French Revolution and the birth of our modern political system. But also he had things to say about children, which was very unusual then. Children should have been seen and not heard. Children were, you know, sent out to do the things adults couldn't be bothered to do, and things like that. And really what Rousseau said at the time was, hang on, we've got to stop, we've got to look at the child's experience. And I think anyone watching and seriously watching children at play sees a variety of things going on. But one of the things we do when we watch children play is we notice that, you know, the diversity there is in play. And at times children are really learning through play. You can almost see the cogs turning in their head as they present themselves with a problem. Might be how,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, get blocks to balance on each other so that they can build a certain thing, or, you know, when they're deeply involved. On the other hand, you'll also see that some children are perhaps very likely involved in play. I always remember, when I think back to my early years experience, I always remember the plasticine table, because Play-Doh hadn't been invented then, so we had plasticine. As had all been modged in together, so it was always sort of grey, browny, sludgy colour.
Yeah, nice colour.
And when I joined, I spent a lot of time at the plasticine table. I loved the plasticine table, and I learnt from the other kids. I watched them. I learnt how to make a sphere. Didn't know it was called a sphere because no one ever came over and joined us, but I learnt how to make a ball. I learnt how to make a coil and make it into a snail.
Snail, yeah, that was my favourite. A snail and a mouse was my favourite. The only things I could make, a snail and a mouse.
And then someone showed me how to make a coil pot. And that's all I learned for the whole time I was at preschool. Because nothing ever changed at the table.
No.
Right, going there, the plasticine was always sludgy grey. There were no different tools there. No one ever joined us at the plasticine table. And I couldn't think of the ideas for what to do next after I'd done those things. And
yeah, no different textures, play extensions, no little small world dinosaurs that you could plug through the plasticine.
Challenge cards with different pictures of what you could make, you know, and no adult came along to give us ideas or show us new techniques. And all the children who visited could all make the same things. And so that's all we did. And after a while, I think I stopped visiting the plasticine table because the play was not interesting. The play was very trivial. And when I went along there, I just made the same things. If someone had been observing that, you've already mentioned some of the things somebody could have stepped in and done.
Yeah.
That's when the learning stops, I think. And children often will keep going back to something that they're finding boring, just to see if they can challenge themselves to do something different. But sometimes it takes a fresh idea, which is where we come in. We have to observe and we have to think, is it now time for a fresh idea? And if it's going interesting, what idea shall it be?
And that's where that very skillful way of, like you said, sitting back, watching, joining the play very, very sensitively, working out how we can still follow the child's ideas so that we don't take over, but so that we are extending it just a little bit more to kind of open up new possibilities that maybe we're negotiating all the time between us. And that's the real skill, isn't it, involved in being an early years educator, being a parent, and basically just playing authentically with children in whatever capacity we might be with them.
Absolutely, and it is a real skill. I mean, when I worked with primary, you know, the planning was done all beforehand, so you were all ready and prepared, and you had your resources there. Now we need to do a bit of that, and you know, probably the more we'll do that, but actually the real skill is to be able to balance that kind of planning with that kind of, oh, what can I do right now, what do they need right now, because tomorrow they may not be at this table, tomorrow they might be doing something else. And the planning of the environment is really important for that. Okay, what have I got to hand that we can suddenly kind of bring in for some fresh inspiration that maybe the children can go and get themselves, so I don't have to keep leaving while I'm working with children. That environment is incredibly skillful. And so as early as practitioners, more so than primary and secondary teachers, we have a range of planning strategies that we draw on, much more diverse, as I say, than other planning. And we have to plan the environment so much more carefully as well to enable these things to happen.
So the long story short then, over our nice sort of chatting tea, and I'm aware kind of we're both outside in our gardens at the moment and the noise is kind of coming through. But so really what we're kind of saying is actually play is not a straightforward concept. And it's not something that we can automatically assume we know what it is and we know how to do it. It is something that is skillful, and it's something that needs to be discussed and debated just a little bit further, maybe even longer than we've got with our cups of tea.
Absolutely. I mean, if you are you know, not thinking of being with anyone who learns through play overtly, you know, carry on thinking in play in very simplistic terms. We don't all have to think about everything in detail, but actually I think if you're working with early years children, play has got to be at the top of your consideration list. And I know that when we meet, we're not allowed to meet at the moment. Coronavirus, we have to stay in our separate gardens miles apart, but I know when we meet, when we are there, when we're at meetings and things like that, there is a feeling of playfulness, isn't there, that we tend to bring.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
So I think for early years people, play is something that follows us all the time. It's something that's in us, or at least for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Playful educators.
Play.
Definitely play away. Well, thank you very much for joining me for Tea in the Garden, Suzy. And thank you for everybody for watching. And if you want to find out some more, then we'll provide the contact details at the end of this short video. See you later.
See you later.
One.